seconds, but that's okay.
That's fine.
I think we're live. We're 3 seconds
Hey.
live. What's up, everybody?
We're glad to be back.
Glad to be back
We're
for
back.
week number 2 of our podcast about sex. We're doing a whole season on sex. My name is Nate Bagley. I'm the host and the creator of the Loveumentary podcast, and I'm here with Kristin Hodson. She is an AASECT certified sex therapist and licensed clinical social worker.
Yep. And founder and executive director of the Healing Group.
The Healing Group.
So you can go check that out.
Do you want to tell them about the Healing Group?
Yeah, it's a mental health clinic located in Salt Lake City, Utah. We specialize in maternal and reproductive mental health, sexuality, and couples. So that's what we do.
They're wonderful. And today we wanted to talk about something really fun. Last week, if you weren't able to join us, we talked about how to talk to your partner about sex. And we're just kind of slowly making our way up the chain, talking about some really basic components of having a healthy sexual relationship and an enjoyable sexual relationship, a passionate sexual relationship. Mm-hmm. Because if you want to have an awesome relationship, an awesome marriage, like this is just a really important component in sex is an important component in that. Yeah.
Well, and they say that sex can be, if your sex is great, it's 10% of your relationship.
Yeah.
If your sex is struggling, it becomes 90% of your relationship. Yeah. And the two biggest things people get divorced over are sex and money.
Yeah.
So let's make our sex the best it can be and make our relationships the strongest they can be.
So one of the things that makes sex so great is orgasm.
Yes.
And that's what we're going to be talking about today. I think orgasm for a lot of people is really mysterious.
It's super mysterious.
I talk to people all the time. I was talking to a woman the other day and she's like, I didn't have an orgasm for like the first 7 years of my marriage. And I've talked to several people. Some people have gone more than a decade.
I have people that have gone 20 years and 4 children later. And and the big key for me is if they're like, I think I've orgasmed, that's the clue that you usually have not experienced an orgasm.
If you don't know for sure.
Yeah, you can experience a lot of pleasure with intercourse and just sexual play. You can experience a lot of pleasure. But an orgasm is the most pleasurable full body experience your body can experience.
So it's one of those you'll know it when you have it kind of situations.
Unmistakable.
It's kind of like, I'm trying to think of something else that you would know it when you had it.
A baby.
Yeah.
You know it when you have it.
Never going to have that experience, but I'm sure that when you have a baby, you know it. So I want to talk a little bit about why that's the case, because I think for some people, orgasm comes really easily. And for other people, it's like a real struggle. It feels like something that you're constantly chasing, and it's just like, it's like the ring on the merry-go-round that you just like, it's always just out of grasp.
And I would also say that for some people, orgasms come really easy. And then they hit a new stage in life and orgasms are harder to come by.
Like you have a baby.
Yes.
Before you have a baby,
medical issues,
menopause,
stress, new jobs, new circumstances in life. Just adding more kids to the mix. And then the strength of an orgasm, that you can have had really strong orgasms and then over time they start to wane and they're not as strong. And there's reasons for this and there's things you can do.
Well, I want to talk about these things because this is an area where you know like so much more than I do. And so I'm really excited to pick your brain.
Awesome. Can't wait.
So where's a good place to start?
So I think you had a story, right? Did you have a story about somebody?
Well, just like I've talked, it's more of a general story. Like I went to lunch.
So let me share one.
Yeah. Why don't you tell me?
I think this one's a good one to start with. So, I've worked with a lot of women and a lot of couples. And when I was a new sex therapist, I was super excited when a couple would come in and say, we want to spice up our sex life. And I would jump right in. And I learned a really important lesson early on of someone who wanted to spice up their sex life. And I'm giving them all their tips and tricks. And then we pulled it back a little bit because sex was okay. But ultimately, I assumed after 4 babies and 22 years of marriage, that both parties knew the anatomy of the body. It was like, oh, of course you know your body, you've had babies. And in further discovery, neither of them knew about the vulva or the clitoris or any parts of the female anatomy. So we went back to the basics, taught about anatomy and about the body and how you even work with the body. And suddenly they came back. She experienced her first orgasm in 22 years and said, our relationship is plenty spicy. No need for counseling.
I feel like men have a distinct advantage when in this department, in the anatomy department, because men handle their penises every single day when they go to the bathroom.
Yeah.
And
I look at my son and it's
just right there,
it's
hands
penis
on
love from the moment they're born.
You look down, it's just, hello friend. Yeah. It's just right there. But if as a woman, it's not, do you know very many women who have like even seen their own?
Having daughters now.
Yeah.
And they're growing up with a mom like me with my career, and they're far more curious about their bodies. And they're not being stunted in that curiosity. But I work with a lot of women and just talk to friends where that curiosity or the development about learning their own body was stunted, or there was messaging. And there's a really great quote, and I'm going to just paraphrase it, that women's anatomy and women's bodies aren't any more complex than men's. We just haven't taken the time to prioritize it. So it's not super mysterious. It's not,
because developmentally it's the exact same thing.
Same parts organized differently. Yes, that's an Emily Nagoski concept. But there's not a priority over female pleasure, or there can be a lot of scary things about that concept, or if I let a child explore their body too much, what can happen. But this is a really critical key to orgasm.
Got it.
Is knowing your body.
So how would you get started with that?
Well, if you don't, it makes me think of there's an old movie called Fried Green Tomatoes. Did you ever see that movie?
Nope.
Oh, it's so good. You should watch it. Okay. So Fried Green Tomatoes, and there's a scene where this woman is trying to reclaim her life and empower herself. So she goes to a sex workshop. And this is what everyone's fear is, of going to a sex workshop. And the instructor gives them all mirrors and says, and now we're going to look at our genitals. And so it's kind of a joke,
right?
Because that's what everyone thinks is going to happen.
Right.
But for the first time, she looks at her own body, that she had never seen her own body. And I would say for many women, they don't know about their own body. So the first place to look, you can start by you don't have to sit in front of a circle of women,
right? But
start by looking at your body, and do it in the privacy of your bathroom. Learn what your body's all about. For some of you, I watched myself giving birth, and so I saw my body, but that's a very different experience when you are watching yourself push out a baby than looking at yourself and knowing what's down there.
Yeah. Just knowing the tools that you have in the box. Yeah.
Yeah. And knowing the anatomy. A lot of women don't know that they have a vulva. Really, truly, as I work with master's level students. Will you define the vulva for people who might be watching and not know or listening? Yep. So the vulva is going to be your exterior genitalia, the parts you can see.
Everything you can see.
That the whole thing. The vagina is just like the canal.
The canal. Yeah.
So
when we say vagina, we're often referring to the vulva, but so this is like a great public service announcement.
Yes.
There's a difference between the vulva and the vagina, and be that person who uses the terms correctly.
That's right. And the thing about the vulva is it's helpful, because when you're trying to describe something, there can be very different pain or pleasure with the vulva to the vagina, which there's a simple exercise I like people to do when we're talking about the sensitivity around the vulva versus the vagina. Yeah. So take your tongue and stick it into the side of your cheek. And I hope everyone listening or don't do that.
Somebody's going to screenshot it.
Don't do that.
Forever. It's on the internet.
But stick your tongue into the side of your cheek. And it's not very sensitive. You can feel it. But that's about how much sensation you have in your vagina, which I think is pretty brilliant, because if you had super sensitivity,
having a baby would be the worst thing in the
wouldn't
world.
Be great. And so then part of the vulva is you have the clitoris. And that's at the top of the vulva. But that has 8,000 nerve endings, so twice as many as the head of the penis.
So you have double the nerve endings that I do.
So
I'm jealous.
That's where the majority of pleasure is coming from, is from the clitoris. So if you think about that, that's where the pleasure is, and thankfully it's not in the vagina. Knowing the difference between the two when you're knowing your body, when you're trying to communicate sexual pleasure with your partner, there's a big distinction there.
Yeah. So I know the answer to this question, but I'm gonna set it up anyway. If the majority of the pleasure comes through the clitoris, and I feel like there's a cultural maybe belief that you're supposed to orgasm through intercourse,
right?
And like, how does that? So if the sensation that you get is basically the inside of your tongue rubbing on the inside of your cheek, I'm assuming it would be really difficult to reach orgasm.
Well, so yeah, let's talk about that. I do see what you're saying, because so you have a few things. You have the G spot, like are you orgasming via G spot? You have vaginal orgasm. G spot is a spot
inside the vagina, inside the vagina,
and it's technically called the Grafenberg spot. But you have to remember, let's go back to anatomy.
Yeah.
So the clitoris is a very small thing. It gets erect and it gets aroused just like a penis.
Swollen.
Remember, same parts, organized differently. But then, and I just lost my train of thought.
So we're talking about the clitoris, and I think where you were going
is the clitoral complex.
It's just like one little spot.
Yes. So what we see is the head of the clitoris, but really, if you look up what the clitoral complex is, it's kind of like a giant horseshoe, and you've got these big legs, and so that's going through your labia majora, and it's throughout your vagina. It's really incredible.
Right.
So if you're experiencing orgasm through your vagina or outer clitoris or even the Grafenberg spot, essentially what the research is showing now is that you're stimulating the clitoral complex. And
it's all part of the same thing.
Yes. And there's not a superior orgasm. There's not, because some women will think, I need to learn how to orgasm vaginally because that is superior. No, not necessarily. You're stimulating the same thing. And for some women, stimulating the G spot or having a vaginal orgasm can also largely depend on the length of their vagina.
Okay.
And what's getting stimulated. So majority of women are going to orgasm through stimulation of the clitoris. So that's important, because some women will feel like, oh, I'm failing at sex, or this is really what a true orgasm is, and that's just not the case. So,
and there's probably a lot of men out there who feel inadequate because they can't get their partner to orgasm through intercourse,
right?
When in reality, like biologically, they may not, or physiologically, they may not be constructed in a way that allows for that to happen very easily,
right?
And so, focusing on the clitoris instead of the vaginal opening or the vagina is
and the key is to follow your pleasure, like what feels good to your body, because Cosmo might tell you that this is what's going to feel good, but you're the expert over your body. And so if you follow the pleasure path and give yourself time to experience pleasure, that's like another part two of how do I orgasm if I'm not, is following pleasure and taking the pressure off of having to achieve orgasm. That a good sexual experience is ending in orgasm. Though a lot of women, if they're not orgasming, there can also be issues around desire, because that's a really great reward system. Sex isn't necessarily a drive. It's driven by a reward base. So if you're never orgasming.
Wait, I think you just glossed over something really important.
Okay.
Sex is not a drive.
Not necessarily, like it's not like food.
Like hunger.
Yep. Where you're going to die.
Right.
If you don't eat, you're going to die.
Right.
You're not going to die if you don't have sex. Will it impact your relationship?
Yeah.
Yes. Are there components of your sexual health? Like if you don't use it, you lose it. Your body needs to orgasm. That's a good part of sexual health, but it's more of a reward-based system.
Okay.
So there's incentive to, like, if I orgasm, there's incentive for me to want to have sex. Cause again, that's the most pleasurable experience I can have.
Got it.
So that's important.
Okay. So it's not a drive, it's a reward system. And the goal here then is to find the most rewarding behaviors or the most pleasurable behaviors that get me to that place.
Yes.
So I feel like, should we talk a little bit about the difference between desire and pleasure?
Desire and arousal?
Or arousal?
Yeah.
Excuse me.
Yep. Nope. I think that would be
a good segue for right now.
Yes, I do. I think that would be good. I want to make sure we get to how context plays a big role to orgasm. All right. Orgasm or context is hugely important.
Yeah, let's talk about what context means.
So let me give you, Emily Nagoski gives a really good example.
I love her.
Emily Nagoski has written the book, Come As You Are. Highly recommend it.
This example?
The tickling,
example?
yes. But first, let me go back and say, Come As You Are, Emily Nagoski is one of the best audible narrators It's so good.
She's
so
wonderful. And she has an awesome TED Talk.
She does have the hard copy and listen, both good. But so take tickling, for example.
Okay.
Tickling, if you are in a state of play and relaxation, tickling can feel very fun. It can feel very playful.
Flirty.
If you are in the wrong context, flirting can make you angry.
Makes you want to punch somebody in the face.
Yes. Yeah. And so sex is the same way. It's very context dependent. If you're in a stressful state, if you are in a room that has a lot of dirty laundry or things that make your brain buzzing of tasks that you have to do, that's a hard context.
Yeah.
To be able to relax, which is key for orgasm. And so switching that context, all the pleasurable sensations are context dependent.
Yeah. So this is huge. So if you're somebody who has like 3 kids and you're running them all to soccer practice and gymnastics and piano lessons, and you have a dinner to cook for everybody, and you have a house that you need to keep clean, and your mother-in-law is living in the basement, and your husband comes home and he wants sex.
It's like 4:45 and you're doing your thing.
And your context is like stress level is redlining, even though it might even sound good. Like it might be good to just put all this stuff down and have sex.
Yeah.
And you might love your husband and want to have sex. Like the context of that moment is like, no, this is not happening.
Right. And so that context, look at the different contexts and see if there's a context where you are more able to get engaged with sex or be open to the idea of sex, which responsive versus spontaneous desire. Yeah. I mean, we've got so many things to cover.
Well, there's so many things that we can cover. And I mean, a lot of this stuff we go into in the Demystifying Desire course.
Yeah, we do.
Which is actually linked in the description of the of this episode.
Right.
So you can go check that out. We dive really deep into this stuff and talk about a lot of the stuff that we can't get to in this episode. So let's
give a teaser of that.
Yeah.
So we're talking context is important for orgasm. But most of the time when we are talking about desire, so let me say arousal is your body's response to sexual stimuli. What happens is your genitals get engorged, they get lubricated, they may not. If you're breastfeeding and different things, you may not. Arousal is not an indicator of desire. So desire is more what you want. I think of desire every day of, I want to go to a movie. I want ice cream. It's more of a feeling where arousal is a physiological response to sexual stimuli.
So I'm just going to put up a couple of kind of summaries. So one good thing to do would be to go back in time and think about times where like you felt really great having sex, like aroused and desiring sex, and identify
what was a great experience for you.
What was going well there. And then contextually, like figure out what your, what were we just talking about?
Desire kind of contextually kind of what allows you to turn on, relax, let go, engage, be open to.
Yeah. So what are the things that help you, or what are the circumstances that make you experience desire, not just arousal? And then what are the circumstances that might make you not?
But sometimes, and this is what we're going to get into, sometimes you're going to experience arousal before you experience desire.
Okay, tell me about that.
So this is what's important, is the main way that we talk about desire is it's spontaneous.
Yeah.
It is falling out of the sky. I'm walking down the street. I want sex. I'm in the shower. I want sex. I am cooking meat and potatoes and I want sex.
I want a cookie. Or some nookie.
Or some nookie. And so that's the main way that we think about it. And so what can happen, there can be struggles in marriages, because if I don't experience spontaneous desire, but I experience responsive desire, I can feel like I'm low desire, that I don't want sex, that I'm broken. My partner can wonder if I'm broken, because what we feel like is normal desire is spontaneous.
Yeah.
So we need to talk about responsive desire, because that can change everything, and it can allow us to look at desire differently.
So maybe in the moment you don't feel like the desire, but maybe after a massage you're like, oh, now I feel desire. It's responding to.
Or I could be like, a lot of women will say the time that they realized they wanted sex was right before they were orgasming.
Oh geez.
So the key is to potentially say, maybe it's not desire I'm looking for, of like, oh, I really want this, but it's if I know that my style is more responsive desire, and meaning I'm going to respond to touch, initiation, romance, like I'm going to be responsive to your spontaneous desire, then what I'm more focusing on is how do I open myself up to a sexual experience, or how do I open myself up to pleasure and to see where it goes?
How do I lean into something that I may not be in the mood for, but still give it a chance to see if once I get my engine revved up, I'll be like, yes, I actually do want this.
Yes. Think about when you go to the gym. Oftentimes you don't want to go to the gym, but after you go to the gym and you have a good workout, you're like, I'm so glad I came.
Yeah.
That's often the way
literally that's what you would say with sex.
That's right.
I'm so glad I came.
I'm so glad I came. But that's also the key, is potentially being like, I want to have more sexual connection with my partner. So first, do I know my body? What are the contexts in which this can happen?
Yeah.
And how do I open myself up so that if he initiates, or I say, maybe, you know what would help me get going is a massage. And
doing
women,
the dishes.
Or chore play. Yeah. A lot of women will experience arousal before they experience desire, where men most often experience desire and arousal follows.
Not always.
Not always. But, and so you can also, and that's a good point. This doesn't have to be a gendered issue. Oftentimes men are seen as the high desire partner and women are seen as the low desire.
So they're portrayed in Hollywood and stuff.
That's exactly right. That men have all the desire and they want it all the time. But kind of the hidden secret is there's a lot of women who want sex a lot more than their husbands. And they don't quite know what to do about that.
Struggle.
Absolutely.
Because does that mean something's wrong with them? Does it mean something's wrong with their husband?
Right.
Does it mean that that's a whole other conversation.
That's a whole other conversation. So orgasms, right?
Yes. Back to orgasm.
So context, knowing your body, understanding kind of your desire style, all can be really helpful. The next thing is I want to talk about vibrators and lubrication.
Okay.
Because if
we're going to do an entire episode on vibrators and lubrication,
so we'll give a little snippet,
but let's give a tease,
just a little teaser, because if you haven't experienced an orgasm, is you don't quite know your body's capacity and what that feels like, and when it all clicks and comes together. So a vibrator can help that, and you can find super tasteful vibrators on Amazon. It
doesn't need to be like a giant.
It can be a little
phallic
bullet.
Yeah.
No, it can be something super, super simple. But if you remember that the clitoral complex is really, so first of all, 8,000 nerve endings on the clitoris. So if you're taking a vibrator and just sticking it on the clitoris, that's going to be overload.
Yeah.
But there can be a lot of pleasure all around the vulva and the body.
And warm up first.
And lubrication, we'll go more into depth in another episode. But for a lot of women, they don't realize that lubrication can be their best friend, and it can change and allow them, if you're experiencing any kind of sexual pain, don't keep doing it, because then your brain starts to associate that sex is painful.
And it shouldn't be.
And you start shutting down and tightening up. And so those are just a few key things. But do we want to talk a little bit about...
So grab some coconut oil.
That can be.
Go buy a...
Coconut oil can absorb super quickly into your body.
That's true.
It's natural, but it can absorb. So we'll go into... I love talking about lubrication so much. I love it.
But yeah.
But I'm wondering in terms of, so how do I orgasm? So
it's a good question.
A lot.
Hey,
I would
Kristin,
dare say,
I wonder if anybody's wondering, so how do I orgasm?
I bet they are.
Can you speak to that?
I will say, let's go back to how prioritizing kind of male pleasure. Most boys experience their first orgasm with themselves.
Yeah.
That's really the way they have it. A lot of women have not experienced an orgasm, and then they're hoping that their partner potentially knows their body better than they know their own body. But if you, and for some women, and this is a value case, for some people, they'll view this as masturbation. You can also look at it as self-exploration and getting to know your body. And if this is a problem in your marriage, knowing your body can actually bring you closer, because you can communicate differently about what you want, what you don't want, what you like, what's working. Knowing your body can be a lot of that. And so there can be a variety of ways that women can experience self-pleasure, learn how their body works, and then take that into the marriage.
To enhance the marriage.
And enhance the relationship.
Yeah, I think that's huge. Yeah.
But I really want to hit on taking off the pressure of orgasm, because then you start to get kind of performance anxiety of like,
yeah, stress
that's
is
where
like
I've
the
gotta
ultimate
go.
anti-aphrodisiac.
Yes.
I feel like it's the moment you get stressed is the moment that like your body starts to shut down and things just don't really.
It's also the partner can put on pressure of they can feel like they've done their job if they make you orgasm.
Right.
Take that out of the equation.
There's a lot of pressure that revolves around sex.
There is, because there's these ideas of this is what's going to make a good experience.
Right.
And I know a lot of women too that like, I don't want to orgasm every single time.
Yeah.
Sometimes I just want to feel close to you and I want to feel connected. And other times I would like to orgasm. And so it's going to potentially take me longer to warm up. So what if we allow for some time for more warm up?
Yeah.
That's the other key is
It's huge.
it can take 20 to 40 minutes for a woman to warm up. So if you're only giving yourself 2 or 3 minutes to start to get aroused.
Yeah, it doesn't work so well, does it?
It can, but really on average, we're talking 20 to 40 minutes.
So don't beat yourself up if it takes a while.
Right.
Don't chase the orgasm, chase the pleasure.
Chase the pleasure.
Follow the pleasure.
Mm-hmm.
Learn what kind of desire you experience. Is it responsive or is it spontaneous?
Mm-hmm.
And then
knowing your body
and being willing to explore your body without feeling guilty about it.
That's right.
And really just like.
And embrace that. Embrace your body.
Yeah.
Those are the key things. And the other podcasts that we'll be having are going to go into other components like lubrication and vibrators, and go back to the other podcasts where it's how do you talk to your partner about sex.
Right.
You may be listening to this and be like, okay, but in our marriage, I don't know.
I don't even know how to bring this.
So go back to our other podcast where you can get some skills from that.
It's really great. I'm sure there are going to be people who listen to this episode and have a bajillion questions,
which I hope.
And I really, me too. I hope you have questions as well. So if you do, please, there's contact information in the show notes here, or you can go to loveumentary.com and fill out the contact form there. Let us know, because we want to make sure that you understand everything you need to understand to make sure that you have a vibrant and awesome sex life.
You can ask anonymously.
Yep.
You can ask completely anonymous. We don't ever share names.
No.
So we would love your questions. We'd love to discuss them. And I know for a fact, one of the number one questions I get is, am I normal? And so sometimes having the courage to ask your question, you're going to find that you're not alone. You're totally normal. And even that can a
relief.
Mm-hmm,
it probably takes a lot of the stress off of and wondering off of whether or not, I don't know, whatever that might be the thing that's preventing you from actually achieving orgasm, is wondering whether or not the thing that you're struggling with and stressing out about it.
Yep. The other book, so just a couple things.
Yeah.
Emily Nagoski's book, Come As You Are.
Come As You Are.
Fantastic. And then Becoming Clitorate.
Mm-hmm.
It's the newest, and it's got some really great research. And
cool. I'll have to check that out.
It's really easy to read.
Awesome.
Thanks, Nate.
Yeah, I hope that was a lot of information. I hope that
flew by.
It flew by so fast.
Flew by.
But this is an important topic, I hope that I honestly hope. I also put together like a big 7 or 8 page guide that goes into more detail on this stuff.
We need to do a part 2 to this, because you know what's coming up right now?
What
is pelvic floor health and how pelvic floor
Kegels.
Impacts the orgasm. Pelvic floor health is so important, and orgasm specifically during the baby years. And I think
there's so much that we can talk about. Okay.
Let's do a part 2.
We'll do a part 2.
Okay.
So more to come, but if you want to download the guide, there's like a 7 or 8 page guide. Go to loveumentary.com for this episode, and you can download it for free. It includes a lot of the stuff that we talked about and a few other things like oming and other stuff that I think would be really helpful.
Yeah.
We have links below for if you want to reach out to Kristin. She's got a really awesome book called Yes, You Can Talk to Your Kids About Sex, and she's giving a digital copies away for free. So you can access that, and the links in the description. And then the big thing that we're really excited about is this Demystifying Desire course.
Yeah.
It's going to be what you just experienced in the last 30 minutes, but on steroids.
Yeah.
So much deeper, so much more detailed, and a little bit more
a lot of self-reflection and workshop, little worksheets
and activities.
Like so thank you for everyone that tuned in. we hope you give us questions.
Yep. And we'll see you next week. We're going to be back talking next week about, do you remember what we're talking about next week?
Nope.
Do you want to sit here with me while I look it up?
Yes. We're going to look.
Stay
tuned. Hold on.
I appreciate all the little thumbs uppies
know.
and hearts that pop up on our screen.
Hi, Lysandra. Thanks for commenting. We're looking right now.
Oh yeah.
Oh,
we're gonna do why did my sex
perfect.
drive disappear after I had a baby?
So there's part 2.
Will that play into your pelvic floor stuff?
Yeah, I just have to remember pelvic floor.
Okay, I'll make a note.
Okay.
So next week we're going to talk about what happens to your sex drive after you have a baby.
Yes.
The
right
book name for
so we'll put it in. It's "Come as You Are" by Emily Nagoski, and then "Becoming Clitoris" is another one. Yep. Great question.
All right, folks. Have a great day.
Thank you.
We love you.
Bye.
Bye.